Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. And today, guys, we are reading chapter 11 of Racing in the Rain. And I'm not even sure if we are on chapter 11. But, no, we're not. We're on chapter 10. I am dumb. No, wait, what? What chapter are we on, guys? I think we're on chapter 11. We might have to check out on YouTube. Yeah, we gotta check out on YouTube real quick. Yep, it is chapter 11. So guys, let's get started on chapter 11. And you just saw a lot of craziness on on YouTube. Okay guys, let's get started. Chapter 11. When I was locked in the house suddenly and firmly, I did not panic. I quickly and carefully took stock of the situation and understood these things. Eve was ill, and the illness was possibly affecting the judgment. Also, she likely would not return for me. I knew that Denny would be home on the third day after 2 nights. I am a dog. I took care of to ration the toilet water. I wandered around the house, sniffing at the crack beneath the pantry floor, and fantasizing about the big bowl of the kibble. I was able to scoop up the occasional dust around cereal zone and dropped in a corner somewhere, and I did my business on that mat at the back door next to the laundry machines. I did not panic. During the second night, approximately 40 hours into my solitude, I think I began to see things that weren't there. I heard a sound coming from Zoe's bedroom. When I investigated, I saw something terrible and frightening. One of her stuffed animal toys was moving about on its own. It was the zebra, the the, the now living zebra. Was nothing was where am I? Frightening. One of her stuffed animal's toys were moving ab- about on its own. It was the zebra. The now living zebra said nothing to me at all. But when it saw me, it began to dance, a twisting, jerky ballet. It began to tease and taunt a Barbie doll. That made me quite angry, and I growled at the evil zebra, but it simply smiled and continued, this time a stuffed frog, picking on a stuffed frog, which it rode like a horse, its hoof in the air like a bronco rider yelling out, "Yeehaw! Yeehaw!" I stalked the zebra. It abused and humiliated each of Zoe's toys. Finally, I could take no more, and I moved in teeth bared for attack to end the brutality once for and all. But before I could get the crazed zebra in my fangs, then it tore at the seam and ran down its belly. Its only seam. It tore at the seam and ran down its belly. Its own seam. It ripped the seam open until it was able to reach in and tear. But its own stuffing. It continued to take itself apart, handful by handful, until it was nothing more than a pile of fabric and stuffing. Shocked by what had happened, I left Zoe's room, hoping that what I'd seen was only in my mind. um, a vision driven by the lack of food. But I knew that it wasn't a vision. It was true. Something terrible had happened. What the heck had happened to the zebra? It was like, I will end myself today. Something terrible had happened. The following afternoon, Danny returned. I heard a taxi pull up, and I watched him unload his bags and walk them up to the back door. I didn't want to see him excited to see him. Yet at the same time I was concerned about what I had done to the doormat. So I gave a couple of small barks to alert him through the window. I could see a lot of surprise on his face. He took out his keys and opened the door, and I tried to block him, but he came in too quickly. That made a squishy sound. He looked down and carefully hopped into the room. What the heck? What are you doing here? He glanced around the kitchen. Nothing was out of the place. Nothing was amiss except me. Eve, he called out, but Eve wasn't there. I didn't know where she was, but she wasn't with me. Are they home? He asked me. I didn't answer. He picked up the phone and dialed. Are Eve and Zoe still at your house? He asked without saying hello. Can I speak to Eve? After a moment, he said, Enzo is here. He said, I'm trying to understand myself. You left him. I couldn't hear what was being said on the other end on the line, but I could imagine. Denny said, This is insane. How could you not remember that your dog is in the house? He said. He'd been here the whole time. He said very angrily. Dang it. And then he hung up the phone and shouted in frustration, a big long shout that was very loud. He walked through the house quickly. I didn't follow him. I waited by the back door. A minute later he returned. This is the only place you used, he asked, pointing at the mat. Good boy, Enzo, good work. He got a garbage bag out of the pantry and scooped his sopping mat into it. It was souping it. It scooped the sopping mat into it, tied it closed, and put it on the back porch. He must be starving. You must be starving. He filled my water bowl and gave me some kibble, which I ate too quickly. You didn't enjoy, but at least it filled the empty space in my stomach. In silence, angrily, he watched me eat, and very soon Eve and Zoe arrived on the back porch. Denny threw open the door. Unbelievable, he said bitterly. You are unbelievable. I was sick, Eve said, stepping into the house, with Zoe hiding behind her. I wasn't thinking. Zoe slipped out from behind her mother and scurried down the hallway toward her room. You should have taken him with you or dropped him at the kennel or something, Danny said. Okay, this is the bad part. Zoe's going to find the zebra teared up, which it was not Enzo's fault. Denny said. I didn't mean to leave him, she said. I heard weeping and looked over. Zoe stood in the door to the hallway crying. Eve pushed past Denny and went to Zoe, kneeling before her. Oh, baby, we're sorry we're fighting. We'll stop. Please don't cry. My animals, Zoe whimpered. What happened to your animals? Eve led Zoe by the hand down the hallway. Denny followed them. I stayed where I wasn't going near the room where the dancing freak zebra had been. I didn't want to see it. Suddenly, I heard thundering footsteps. Denny hurtled angrily, and his eyes locked on me. "You stupid dog," he growled. He dragged me through the kitchen and down the hall into Zoe's room, where she sat stunned on the floor. In the middle of the huge mess, her dolls and her animals all torn to shreds. A complete disaster, total ruin. I could only assume the evil demon zebra after I had left. I should have eliminated the zebra when I had my chance. I should have eaten it if it had killed me. Denny was so angry about his anger, filled up the entire room, the entire house. Nothing was at large as Denny. "Anger! Bad dog!" he bellowed, and he raised his hands. "Denny, no!" Eve cried. She rushed to me and covered me with her own body. She protected me. Denny stopped. He wouldn't hit her, no matter what. Just as he wouldn't hit me. He hadn't wanted to hit me. I know. He wanted to hit the demon, the evil zebra, the dark creature that possessed the stuffed animal. Denny believed the evil demon was in me, but I wasn't. I saw it. The evil demon was in me, but it wasn't. I saw it. The demon had possessed the zebra and left me at the bloody scene with no voice to defend myself. I had been framed. We'll get new animals, baby," Eve said to Zoe. "We'll go to the store tomorrow." As gently as I could, I slunk towards Zoe. The sad little girl on the floor, surrounded by the rubble of her toys, tears on her cheeks. I crawled to her on my elbows and placed where am I? And placed my nose next to asked if she could ever forgive me for not protecting her animals. She waited a long time to give me her answer, but she finally gave it. She placed her hand on my head and let it rest there. She didn't scratch me. It would be a while before she allowed herself to do that, but she did touch me with her meant she forgave me for what had happened. Later, after everyone had eaten and Zoe was put to bed, I found Denny sitting on the porch steps with a drink of hard liqueur, which I thought was strange because he hardly ever drank hard liqueur. I approached cautiously, and he noticed. "It's okay, boy," he said. He patted the next step next to him, and I went to him. I sniffed his wrist and took a tentative lick. He smiled and rubbed my neck. "I'm really sorry," he said. I lost my mind. Denny finished his drink with a long swallow and shivered. He produced a bottle from nowhere and poured himself another. He stood up and took a couple of steps and stretched to the sky. We got first place, Enzo. We took my place overall. You know what that means." My heart jumped. I knew what it meant. It meant that he was the champion. It meant he was the best. It means a seat in the touring car next season. That's what it means, Denny said to me. I got an offer for a real live racing team. Do you know what an offer is? Getting an offer means I can drive if I come up with my share of sponsorship money for the season, and if I'm willing to spend 6 months away from Eve and Zoe, And you, am I willing to do that? I didn't say anything because I was torn. I knew I was Daddy's biggest fan and supporter of his racing because I also felt something like that Eve and Zoe must have felt. Whenever he went away, I got a hollow pit in my stomach at the idea of the absence. He must have been able to read my mind because he gulped at the glass and said, "I don't think so either," which was that I was thinking, "I'm taking those stuffed animals out of your allowance," he said with a chuckle. He looked at me, then took my chin with his hands. "I love you, boy," he said, "and I promise I'll never hurt you, no matter what. I'm really sorry." He was blathering, he was drunk, but it made me feel so much love for him, too. "You're tough," he said. "You can do 3 days like that because you're one tough dog." I felt proud. I felt proud. I felt proud. "I know you never do anything deliberately to hurt Zoe," he said. To hurt Zoe, he said. I said you. I laid my head on his leg and looked up at him. "Sometimes I think you actually understand me," he said. "It's like the person inside there, like you, know everything." "I do," I said to myself. "I do." Chapter 12. Eve's condition was unpredictable. One day she would suffer a crushing headache. Another day, a terrible stomach ache. A third would open to dizziness and end with a dark and angry mood. And these days were never linked together in a row because them would be days or even weeks of life as usual. And then Denny would get a call at work, and he would run to Eve's assistance. He'd drive her home from her job and spend the rest of the day watching helplessly. Denny felt powerless, and in that regard, I can understand his point of view. It's frustrating for me to be unable to speak, to feel that I have so much to say, so many ways I can help, but I can't. But it can't. Denny avoided the madness of his situation by driving through it. There was nothing he could do to make Eve's. Oh, my neck hurts. Eve's distress go away. And once he realized that, he made a commitment to do everything else better. Often things happen to race cars. In the heat of the race, a transmission may break, suddenly leaving the driver without all his gears. Or perhaps a clutch fails. Brakes so soft from overheating, suspensions break. When faced with one of these problems, the poor driver crashes. The average driver gives up. The great drivers drive through the problem. They figure out a way to continue racing. A true champion can accomplish things that a normal person would think impossible. Denny cut back his hours at work so he could take Zoe to her preschool in the evenings after dinner. He 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 read to her and helped her learn her numbers and letters. He took over all the grocery shopping and cooking. He took over the cleaning of the house. He wanted to relieve Eve of any burden, any job that could cause stress. When he came affectionate way I had grown used to seeing, it was impossible for him to do everything. Clearly, he had decided that care of her would receive the topmost priority, which I believe was the correct thing for him to do under the circumstances because he had me. Denny did not stop loving Eve. He merely delegated his love giving to me. I became the provider of love and comfort. When she allied and he took charge of Zoe and whisked her out so that she might not hear the cries of agony from her mother, I stayed behind. He trusted me. He would tell me as he and Zoe packed their bottles of water and cookies, "Go take care of her for me, Enzo, please." And I did. I took care of her by curling up at her bedside, or if she had collapsed on the floor, by curling up next to her there. Often she would hold me close to her, hold me tight to her body, and when she did, she would tell me things about the pain demon um germ germ um gob gremlin, ghost, phantom, shadow, and devil. People are afraid of them, so they pretend that they exist only in stories, in books that can be closed and put on the shelf. They clench their eyes shut so they will see no evil. But trust me, when I tell you that devils like the zebra are real, somewhere the zebra is dancing. The spring finally came to us after an exceptionally wet winter. It was full of gray days and rain and edgy cold I found depressing over the winter. Eve ate poorly and became thin and pale. Danny was concerned, but Eve never heeded his pleas for her to consult a doctor. A mild case of depression, she would say. They'll try to give her pills, and she doesn't want pills. And one evening after dinner, which she was a special one, tough, I don't remember. It was a birthday or an anniversary. Denny suddenly took Eve into his arms and kissed her. It seemed so odd to me because they had acted that way with each other in such a long time. But their exchange seemed weak and unenthusiastic, and she smiled at him, but she was pretending. I could tell because she looked at me over Denny's shoulder and waved me off respectfully. I withdrew to another room and drifted into a light sleep. And if I recall correctly, I dreamed of the zebra. Oh no, guys. What will happen in the next chapter? I don't remember from the movie, so we don't know. But I hope you enjoyed these two chapters, chapter 12 and chapter 11. And guys, I hope you enjoyed. Bye! See you next time. AKA, this chapter is pretty sad. Bye!